ready, Calvin? Here we go. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. We will call the meeting to order for Wednesday, September 9th at 5:15 p.m. Would all of you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Zerlo, sir, would you please conduct the roll?
Certainly. Mr. Castine.
Present.
Mr. Conroy.
Here.
Mr. Hall. Here. Mr. Henry.
Here.
Mr. McGill.
Here.
Mr. Perrier.
There.
Mr. Potiker.
Here.
Mr. Rosenquist.
Present.
Mr. Timmons.
Here.
Ms. Waldron.
Here.
Apologize.
Thank you. All legislators have received a copy of the stenographer's minutes of the August 26, 2020 session. If there are no additions, deletions, or corrections, I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes as presented. May I have a motion? So moved. Motion by Mr. McGill. Second by Mr. Perrier. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to share their thoughts or concerns with the legislature? Please raise your hand if you wish to be recognized and state your name and address for the record. And in accordance with the rules of order, all speakers will be limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone that wishes to address the legislature? Okay. We will now proceed to the committee reports. Each legislator chairs one of the 10 standing committees, and I will call on the chairperson of each committee in alphabetical order by committee, starting with Buildings and Grounds and Mr. Perrier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Building and Grounds Committee meeting scheduled for Monday, September 14th was canceled. Next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, October 8th at 4:30 p.m. End of report.
Thank you, sir. Children and Family Services, Mr. Potter.
Mr. Chairman, the Children and Family Services Committee meeting scheduled for Monday, September 1st was canceled. The next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, October 6th at 5:15 p.m. End of report.
Thank you. Finance, Mr. Timmons.
Are you skipping economic
Did it skip one?
development?
Oh, I'm sorry, I did. Economic Development, Mr. Rosenquist.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, the Economic Development and County Operations Committee meeting scheduled for Tuesday, September 8th was canceled. The committee was pulled on Resolution 535 and 547 under Waive Rule 13.2. Resolution 536 has been withdrawn. And the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, October 13th at 5 p.m. and report.
Thank you, sir. Now, Finance, Mr. Timmons.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Finance Committee met Wednesday, September 2nd. Kimberly Davis, the county treasurer, reported that this year, pre-COVID, the county was $1.4 million above projected revenue, but receipts continued to decline each month. The county has decided to reduce the sales tax by 9% from last year for next year. All towns and villages have been contacted to let them know the estimated reduction in sales tax for 2021, so they can start preparing their budgets. We're continuing to watch and prepare for anticipated state aid reductions. Representatives from the North Country Chamber of Commerce were present to discuss the 2021 marketing plan. Representatives from Clinton Community College were present to discuss the 2021 budget request. Resolutions 504 through 506 are included on today's agenda. The next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, October 7th at 6:15 p.m. End of report.
Thank you, sir. Health, Ms. Waldron.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Health Committee met Tuesday, September 1st at 4:30 p.m. John Canoza, the Director of Public Health, and Rochelle Gregory, the Director of Community Services, were present to discuss resolutions number 507 through 512 on the agenda, and the committee was pulled on resolution 513. The next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, October 6th at 4:30 p.m. At this time, I would like to ask Mr. Canoza to provide a brief update on the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you, Patty. Appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. Give you some updates here as far as the numbers. These are hot off the press. About an hour and a half ago, we got the latest updates from our operations, including our IQ contact tracing team and Major Nick Leon with the Sheriff's Department. We currently have, this is good, 0 active cases right now, which means we have no one in isolation right now. This is very, very important, very positive news. We stand pat at 153 positive lab confirmed tests to date total. 149 of them have recovered, and we have in the state of New York 28,231 total tested as of September 7th. So that's pretty positive. We're looking good on just about every number you can ask for right now. As you can understand, our focus right now is for schools opening. That's the big challenge, the big hurdle we're facing right now. We find ourselves a little bit at a disadvantage simply because we're waiting very impatiently for new guidance from the state of New York. We were hoping it would come out this weekend. Always some good work on the weekend. You get a notification from the state of New York. It can be a good thing, but it never came. And the state owes us that information. We have related again to Mike. Mike has related to the control room to knock on the door of the state of New York to get that guidance that we need. This guidance will basically tell us how children, students, can return to school after being COVID positive.
Or not.
Or not COVID positive. Very good. Thank you, Mike. Yes, it basically outlines the need for or not having a COVID negative test. Okay, that's the critical part. The current guidelines indicate you need a doctor's note, you have to be symptom-free for the last 10 days plus 3 days with no fever, and have a negative COVID test to get back into school. Those have been argued, and we're trying to get the CDC to match, I should say the state of New York to match what the CDC is saying right now in terms of not needing those test results right now. So the doctor is what we're looking for to have with that. So we're also working with Jackie on a confidentiality agreement. Of course, school nurses and our nurses at the health department communicate on a regular basis on various communicable diseases, pertussis, chickenpox, you name it, they talk about it all the time. Because we have COVID, we're going to wind up talking with more people than just your school nurses. There'll be teachers involved, principals, superintendents, what have you, because it's a bigger matter that we're talking about. So we want to be rest assured that we will not share any appropriately HIPAA protected information, and the schools as a whole, just school nurses, principals, superintendents will not share that information. So Jackie is working on that for CVES, and I had a little chat with her today, and hopefully we're all be on the same path, maybe by the end of this week with a confidentiality agreement. So, in other final news, New York cause complaints, we have our environmental health and safety group working on the majority of those. To some degree of success, it always helps, and I'll put this word out to all of you, to get ahead of the game. Last week, Mark Henry saw a Facebook post, Moore's Volunteer Fire Department. He saw it before I did. I'm not a Facebook guy. Mark got it. Mark saw it. He talked to me about it. Within, well, that was less than 20 hours, I think we had that thing resolved, where our staff talked to Moore's Fire Department, chief, got everything squared away, and they understood they couldn't have more or less a lot of people, more than 50 people come sitting at picnic tables and eating their chicken barbecue. What they could do, however, is have really put a major focus on their takeout, and they did. And as I understand, not only was it a raving success, including money-wise, I guess they sold out of food within like an exorbitant short period of time, thus meaning they made some serious cash on that. So everything worked out. They found a way to adapt and overcome the COVID restrictions and make money on the deal, which is what it's all about for the volunteer fire department. So they were doing takeout, servicing cars, people stayed in their cars and ate like at the drive-in movie theater. So it worked out very well. I was really happy with that. So if you ever see anything like that on Facebook, Twitter, I don't do that stuff. But if you see that, let me know. Let me know. We can jump on it. The sooner we jump on it, the more easier we can approach the matter and sensitively, politically take care of the problem, if you get my drift. So that's about all I have.
John, I've got a question for you. For the schools, I know you said the guidelines haven't come out yet.
Right.
But it's been a topic in the control room, and nobody seems to be able to know what it means. when they talk about proximate exposure.
Right.
Now, have they come up with what that means yet? Because if, does that mean if one student comes into the 4th grade, does everybody have proximate exposure now?
That is still a very vague item right now.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely need, not necessarily for me or Mike or you, but for my nurses. They need to have everything from A to Z listed out in that guide so they know exactly what they can do. There can be no gray area when we're working with this, because obviously we've got a lot of kids, a lot of schools. We need to be able to do it soup to nuts, you know, on the spot, just like that. We don't have time to dally, so.
So John, I saw a definition of that was within 6 feet for more than 10 minutes.
10 minutes, this has been reputed too, that's right. We were looking for more definition on that in the new state guidance as well,
Okay,
yes.
so that's
We-
no good anymore?
We got it's not necessarily no good, we're looking for the final say on it, because that's what we keep getting from the state of New York. Well, the new guidance will be coming. We,
Right.
honestly, like I said, we were hoping it would come this weekend, just so we could say we had it before the kids really started up on Tuesday. Most of the kids have returned to school in one fashion, hybrid or in face, in our county. We have a few schools that are not, like Costable, I recall, and Saranac. I don't think they've started yet, so. Okay. Any other questions?
Who's got one? Chris does.
Yeah, a couple things. First, you know, I've sent emails to you about the gym openings, and and once there's a downtown gym that I go to, and so I just wanted to thank you and your team for just really getting in there. It
Yeah.
was almost like the next day that they were able to open,
Yeah.
or the day that they were
Yeah.
able to open, that somebody went in, told him what he needs to do, you know, got his business back on track. So I really appreciate both doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then can you just talk briefly about the SUNY Plattsburgh pool testing?
Oh.
What's next with that, and
Yeah.
and how that's going to
Oh,
progress?
absolutely. On your first comment, please be advised, if you have any gyms in your jurisdiction, please have them call environmental. We're taking it first come, first serve. They have to call us. They should want to call us and get on the schedule to get inspected. And that's how, we've only got, I think, a third to half of our total gyms in Clinton County inspected right now. They're not calling us. Maybe they're not ready. Maybe their air system, their air handling system's not been brought up to speed to be close or at where it's supposed to be. I don't know, but we need them. And I like this. Heck, we'll put the shoe on, put the ball in their court. You know, let them call us and get on the schedule to make it happen. And our guys, like Chris said, will do it, you know, so. On pool testing, yes, the best news I heard, that was a good day. They had tested over 460 kids, taken saliva samples from them. 12 kids, students' samples went into one test to be submitted to Upstate Medical Center in Syracuse, New York for testing. It's called a pooled sample. In my environmental terms, we call that composite sampling. In the COVID world, you can composite a lot of samples without diluting the result. In my old world, you can't do too much dilution. You can't throw a lot of samples together or else you dilute the result. In this case, 12 students' saliva samples were submitted for testing, and of those 449 individual samples equaled 38 pool samples total, all came back negative. How blessed are we on that? And now the school's going to be doing that in perpetuity for the rest of the semester, doing approximately 400 to 500 students per week. That's what they're looking at. Now, I don't know how the hell they're doing, quite frankly. Upstate, they got to be using other labs, because Upstate's doing the majority of all the SUNY schools. You can just imagine what the numbers of samples that are being submitted there. So, and I'm also talking, I submitted all the information so that you all know, pool testing that SUNY's doing, that I got from them. I submitted that to Dr. Davey at CVES, because they're looking into pool testing, okay? A lot of the pool testing, the governor eventually came around and said, yeah, everybody's got to be pool tested. We got to get pool tested out there. But a lot of the schools were doing that before the governor even ordered that, simply because out of pressure, pure pressure. Pressure by the teachers going back to the SUNY colleges, universities, and also the communities. You know, they want to make sure that these kids are safe. So so some things work out, you know, and that's a good thing. So, does that explain it?
Yeah, perfect, and you know, yeah, thank you.
I think they can go up to 25.
Yeah, they can. They can. There's that dilution effect. See, I wouldn't mess with that. That's my personal
I think that's why they're
opinion.
doing 12.
I have a
The other thing, I don't
chemistry.
have a scientific poll, but I
Yeah.
noticed that if you look at colleges and universities, from what I've seen, you know, University of Alabama, like 150, University of Georgia, this many, and all these university colleges. And then when they do the contact tracing, it's always from a beach or a pool party or a
Correct.
frat party or something.
Correct.
I noticed that none of them caught it in math class or social studies. Or
No, it's in the dorms.
Yeah, I think it'd be
And
standard, yeah.
I'm glad, Chris, you mentioned that, because the next part of testing, to open up a whole new realm, is gonna be wastewater testing. You find the manholes where the sewer inverts come in from each of the resident halls into the mains up at SUNY campus. You could take a grab sample of that, or a composite, it doesn't really matter, and you could submit that for testing. That's the new thing. The State Department of Health is doing pilot studies for Albany, universities in Albany, Syracuse, Buffalo, and Newburgh. They're gonna do wastewater testing as kind of like a meteorologist forecast to see what's coming down, literally, down the pipes, to identify hot spots for COVID-19. They can do this. So, and I agreed to Mayor Reed, he was all over it with John Ruff, City Environmental Manager, and we're all on the same page. Let's get it going, boys. Let's get it going, let's do it. It's another tool for us to use to identify it, so it's a good thing. These are good things. So let's hope it stays good. Everybody keep your guard up. That's all I care about.
Thank you, John.
Thank
Anything
you.
more for John? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Anything more from you, Pat? Human Services, Mr. Conroy.
Yes, the Human Services Committee meeting scheduled for Wednesday, September 2nd was canceled. The committee was polled on resolution number 514, and the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, October 7th at 5:15 p.m. End of report.
Thank you. Personnel, I'll do that. The Personnel Committee met Thursday, September 3rd. We discussed resolutions 515 through 527, which are on today's agenda. And the next Personnel Committee meeting is tentatively scheduled for Monday, October 5th at 4 p.m. Plattsburgh International Airport, Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Plattsburgh International Airport Committee was polled on resolutions 528 and 529 on tonight's agenda, as well as resolution 548 under Wayne Rule 13.2. The next Plattsburgh International Airport Committee meeting is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, September 23rd at 4 p.m. End of report. Thank you.
Thank you. Public Safety, Mr. Castman.
The Public Safety Committee met Thursday, September 3rd, and discussed resolutions number 530 through 534 on today's agenda. The next Public Safety Committee meeting is tentatively scheduled for Monday, October 5th at 5 p.m. End of report.
Yes, sir. Transportation, Mr. McGill.
The next Transportation Committee meeting is tentatively scheduled for Monday, September 14th at 5:15 p.m. End of report.
Thank you. Liaison reports. I know a lot of those aren't meeting, but we'll run through them quickly. Board of Health is, the next Board of Health meeting is September 21st at 7 p.m. Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Rosenquist.
Everybody was here for the presentation, that is my report.
Okay, thank you. Clinton Community College, Mr. Rosenquist. Same thing. I'm going to skip right down to the Workforce Development Board.
Sure, our quarterly meeting is Friday, so I'll have a report next regular session.
Thank you. Community Services Board, Mr. Conroy.
No report.
Cooperative Extension, Mr. Timmons.
No report.
Discipline Review, we got nothing, right, Cam? Agreements, we got nothing. Inter-county, Ms. Walden.
No report.
Will I have you, LCLG?
Yes, actually, we did have a special meeting on August 28th, establishing the COVID-19 Business Recovery Program revolving loan fund.
So other, Mr. Perry or Mr. Timmons?
We were looking for next year's financing and got that pretty well set. Not much of a change in there. One thing that is a definite is that the Emerald Ash Borer is here, and it will definitely take out all the ash trees in the area. That if you have an ash tree, you might as well cut it down and use it now, or it's just going to be dead in probably a couple of years. There is a way of treating it. The trees actually have to be injected by a professional, I believe on a yearly basis. So if you really love your ash trees, there are abilities to keep it, but other than that, he said if you have a lot, you're gonna notice, you're gonna go, and it's gonna be a fast happening thing. It's already happened in the southern part of the state. so it's not good. Not good for baseball either. Maple's not as good.
So we got library, nothing there, that's it. We're good there. Staff member reports, Ms. Gallagher.
I would like to request an executive session tonight just to give an annual report on pending litigation against the
Okay.
county.
Mr. Zerlo.
A few items today, Mr. Chairman. First one of those, you folks at I believe one meeting ago, passed the second furlough program for the county. Kim handed me tracking data for that second furlough. There were 36 people who asked for the furlough, and 24 of those were approved. Keep in mind, this is a rolling thing, so as things change with respect to school-age children in schools, maybe there's more people who take advantage of that. Back at the napkin calculations, those 24 people could result in a savings in excess of $100,000. So, not going to solve our problem, but it is a step in the right direction. And provide the opportunity for our employees to better manage childcare issues during the back to school. Secondly, you're probably already aware, and at the federal level, the federal Senate has introduced a piece of scaled down stimulus legislation called the skinny bill. That is nothing that solves the problems. It does not include any money for state and local aid. The Speaker of the House, as well as the Minority Leader Schumer in the Senate, have both come out against it. As such, that bill probably has no chance of ever becoming law either. So more posturing on the federal level. Meanwhile, state and local governments remain in dire need of federal assistance. That's all I have.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Any question? Yes.
Mike, on the first thing, on the furlough,
Yes.
why were there 6 people refused?
12 people refused. So, operational needs. Keep in mind, the first time we went through this process, the executive order of 50% staffing was in play, so it kind of solved another problem for us. Now, the county government is up and running in full force, and as such, we need the employees. Thank you.
Anybody else for Michael? Okay. We'll move to the resolutions. Before voting on the resolutions, I want to note that the majority of the resolutions have been thoroughly discussed by the appropriate committees, and the legislature is taking action tonight based in large part on the recommendations of those committees. Mr. Zerlo, would you please read the title of the resolutions to be acted upon?
Certainly. Resolution 504, approving state aid application for the North Country Chamber of Commerce Legislature.
Motion, Mr. Timmons, second, Mr. Rosenquist. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 505, authorizing the clerk of the Clinton County Legislature to advertise for a public hearing on the 2020-2021 Clinton Community College budget, Clinton Community College.
Motion, Mr. Timmons, second, Mr. Rosenquist. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 506, authorizing the purchasing agent to solicit a request for qualifications for audit services at Treasurer's Office.
Motion, Mr. Timmons, second, Mr. Rosenquist. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 507, authorizing children and youth with special health care needs grant acceptance, Health Department.
Motion, Ms. Waldron, second, Mr. McGill. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 508, authorizing contract with Child Care Coordinating Council of the North Country Health Department.
Motion, Ms. Waldron, second, Mr. Conroy. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 509, authorizing contract with preschool special education transportation with First Transit Incorporated, Health Department.
Motion, Ms. Waldron, second, Mr. Rosenquist. Discussion?
I think it's just worth pointing out, this is a very expensive contract. You know, if there's any silver lining, that the local share of that contract did not increase from 2020 to 2021, but, you know, this is a hard thing. We advocate on the state level for change of policy to potentially reduce these costs, but to date, we have not been successful.
Has the state, can you tell me, I know like for community college, for example, the state has reduced their share over time. This has been around for a while, has the state?
This is not a, this is, yes, that cost, now, that could go down based on what we're expecting this year, yes.
But so far they've held their
Correct.
maintenance of effort or whatever.
Well, they've not changed the amount of state aid
Over the years.
over the years.
So it has happened. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall? Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 510, authorizing Operation Light Quick Cheap Grant Application and Acceptance, Health Department.
Motion, Ms. Waldron. Second, Mr. McGill. Did you name that, Ms. Waldron?
Yes, I did.
That's a great name. Second, Mr. McGill. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall? Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 511, authorizing COVID-19 ELC Response Grant Application and Acceptance, Health Department.
Motion, Ms. Waldron. Second, Mr. Conroy. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall? Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 512, authorizing contract with Venatel LLC, Mental Health and Addiction.
Motion, Ms. Waldron. Second, Mr. McGill. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall? Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 513, authorizing immunization action plan grant amendment, Health Department.
Motion, Ms. Waldron. Second, Mr. Rosenquist. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall? Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 514, authorizing contract amendment with Cornell Cooperative Extension, Office for the Aging.
Motion, Mr. Conroy. Second, Mr. Castine. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall? Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 515, approving backfill of permanent full-time typist position, Public Defender.
Motion, Mr. Castine. Second, Mr. Hall. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 516, approving backfill of permanent full-time Director of Healthcare Services position, Health Department.
Motion, Mr. Hall. Second, Mr. Rosenquist. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 517, approving reclassification of permanent full-time building equipment mechanic position down to a permanent full-time automotive mechanic position with backfill, solid waste.
Motion, Mr. Rosenquist. Second, Mr. Timmons. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 518, approving backfill of permanent part-time station attendant position, solid waste.
Motion, Mr. Timmons. Second, Mr. Castine. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 519, approving backfill of permanent full-time nurses aide position, nursing home.
Motion, Mr. Castine. Second, Mr. Hall. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 520, approving backfill of permanent full-time custodian position, buildings and grounds.
Motion, Mr. Hall. Second, Mr. Rosenquist. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 521, approving backfill of permanent full-time motor vehicle license clerk position, Department of Motor Vehicles.
Motion, Mr. Timmons. Second, Mr. Castine. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 522, approving creation of temporary full-time emergency communications dispatcher position, emergency services.
Motion, Mr. Castine. Second, Mr. Hall. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 523, approving backfill of permanent full-time principal social welfare examiner position, social services.
Motion, Mr. Rosenquist, second, Mr. Hall. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 524, approving the creation of a temporary full-time election specialist, Board of Elections.
Motion, Mr. Hall, second, Mr. Timmons. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 525, approving the increase of hours for 2 temporary part-time election specialist positions, Board of Elections.
Motion, Mr. Timmons, second, Mr. Hall. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 526, approving backfill of permanent full-time senior tax clerk typist position, Treasurer's Office.
Motion, Mr. Rosenquist, second, Mr. Castine. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 527, approving backfill of permanent full-time senior tax clerk typist position, Treasurer's Office.
Motion, Mr. Timmons, second, Mr. Hall. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 528, authorizing reconstruction of taxiway B pavement and general aviation apron design grant acceptance, Plattsburgh International.
Motion, Mr. Hall, second, Mr. Perrier. Discussion.
Just very briefly, Chairman, this resolution, the next resolution and the resolution number 13.2, you will see 0 county share associated with those as part of the CARES Act, the local share associated with these aviation capital projects the federal government is paying for.
Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 529, authorizing aircraft rescue and firefighting personal protective equipment project grant acceptance, Plattsburgh International.
Motion, Mr. Hall, second, Mr. Potiker. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 530, authorizing contract with New York State Defenders Association, Public Defender.
Motion, Mr. Castine, second, Mr. Hall. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 531, authorizing contract with Samaritan Hospital, an affiliate of St. Peter's Health Partners, District Attorney's Office, Child Advocacy Center.
Motion, Mr. Castine, second, Mr. McGill. Discussion. Bless you.
Question.
Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 532, authorizing contract with the University of Vermont Health Network Medical Group, District Attorney's Office, Child Advocacy Center.
Motion, Mr. Castine, second, Mr. Timmons. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 533, authorizing New York State Department of Health Research Incorporated overdose data to action grant application and acceptance, Coroner, Legislature.
Motion, Mr. Castine, second, Mr. McGill. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 534, authorizing contract with Glens Falls Hospital, Coroner.
Motion, Mr. Castine, second, Mr. Potiker. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Carried. Did you get my note on Chad coming?
Did not. Resolution 535, authorizing contract with Plattsburgh State University College, Board of Elections.
Motion, Mr. Rosenquist, second, Mr. Castine. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 536 has been withdrawn. Resolution 537, honoring essential employees and frontline workers throughout Clinton County during the COVID-19 pandemic, Legislature.
5-5, Mr. Hall?
Yes.
5-5, Mr. Perrier? Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I'd like to thank Mr. Hall for the work on that resolution, bringing that up. Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Resolution 538, authorizing the county treasurer to establish appropriation and corresponding revenue for the Wellness and Nutrition Program Grant Office for the Aging.
Motion, Mr. Timmons, second, Mr. Conroy. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 539, authorizing the county treasurer to establish appropriation and corresponding revenue for the Area Agency on Aging Transportation Program Grant, Office for the Aging.
Motion, Mr. Timmons, second, Mr. Conroy. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Carried. Resolution 540, authorizing the county treasurer to establish appropriation and corresponding revenue for the Caregiver Resource Center Grant, Office for the Aging.
Motion, Mr. Timmons, second, Mr. Conroy. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 541, authorizing the county treasurer to establish appropriation and corresponding revenue for the Health Insurance Information Counseling and Assistance Program Grant, Office for the Aging.
Motion, Mr. Timmons, second, Mr. Conroy. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 542, authorizing the county treasurer to increase appropriation and corresponding revenue for the Clinton County Public Transit Program, Clinton County Public Transit.
Motion, Mr. Timmons, second, Mr. Rosenquist. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 543, authorizing the county treasurer to establish appropriation and corresponding revenue for the Operation Light Quick Cheap Grant, Health Department.
Motion, Mr. Timmons, second, Ms. Waldron. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 544, authorizing the county treasurer to increase appropriation and corresponding revenue for the Immunization Action Plan Grant, Health Department.
Motion, Mr. Timmons, second, Ms. Waldron. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 545, authorizing the county treasurer to establish appropriation and corresponding revenue for the Census 2020 Complete Count Outreach Grant, Planning Department.
Motion, Mr. Timmons, second, Mr. Rosenquist. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Carried.
Resolution 546, authorizing the county treasurer to establish appropriation and corresponding revenue for the Community Development Block Grant, Planning Department.
Motion, Mr. Timmons, second, Mr. Rosenquist. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Carried. I'd like a motion to waive Rule 13.2.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hall, second by Mr. Rosenquist. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 547, amending Resolution 179 dated March 11, 2020, titled Authorizing Sale of Property at Former Clinton County Airport Legislature.
Motion, Mr. Rosenquist. Second, Mr. Potiker. Discussion.
Simply a name change. At closing, they requested a name change, and since this was a real property transaction, we felt it prudent to change the resolution so everything is in order.
Anything? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And Resolution 548, authorizing rehabilitation of runway 1735 pavement Phase 2 project, grant acceptance, Plattsburgh International.
Motion, Mr. Hall. Second, Ms. Waldron. Discussion.
Just, you can see the largesse of those numbers, so after I've castigated the federal government, I do want to thank them because this was a considerable savings to Clinton County.
Thank you for doing that. Roll call.
Mr. Perrier.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Carried. Do we have anything further to come before the legislature? I'd like to entertain a motion for executive session.
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Patty.
Patty?
And then, yeah, thank you.
Chris? Chris, a second. Motion a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We are in regular session. Anything to come before us?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn, I have a second by Chris, motion by Bobby, second by Chris. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.